Hey houseplant friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a really exciting video for you. This is the Velvet Anthurium complete care guide. Some cool species, some costs, some prices. We're gonna talk about humidity, we're gonna talk about lighting, we're gonna talk about it all. If you're interested in that, why don't you hit like on this video? Why don't you subscribe since I'm putting these out really frequently? Turn on notifications if you don't already have those on. We're gonna start off this video with a big warning. There are some Velvet Anthurium that you can totally have in your house without a greenhouse. These are not plants that you should buy if you cannot take care of them, especially after it's been going through that shipping period. It needs a place to go. So do not order these plants if you do not have the following conditions: a greenhouse that you regularly tend to, like every single day, a very sizable cloche. When I mean sizable, I'm talking at least 1.5 to 2 feet tall. The reason you can't have a smaller cloche is because the air will become stale really fast and it will mold. Let's get into the content. Oh, I do also want to say that the Plants Meow and Legends of Monstera have both made videos about Velvet Anthurium care, so after you watch this one, why don't you go check out their 2 videos. I'll make sure to link all their videos in the description on the topic so that in case you're wanting some more research, you can go do that. Let's talk about soil composition. This might be controversial. I keep all of my Anthurium in soil, in terracotta pots and cement pots. I don't keep any of my Anthurium in moss. I know in Jimmy's Anthurium care video, he says that he waters his moss maybe once every 3 weeks. I keep my stuff in soil, and my soil mix is 3/4 orchid bark to 1/2 potting soil. The reason I do this is because Anthurium are epiphytes. They really like bark. They like to grab onto that wet, gushy bark, and their roots are specially tailored to be able to suck all that water out of that bark and absorb it into their bodies. Because they're not in pots in the wild, they're not constantly sitting in that wet stuff. By giving them a mixture that's mostly just bark, it will drain very easily, won't retain too much moisture. It just helps the roots to grab onto something that they're used to in their natural habitat, which is what we want to go for. Let's talk if you want to do terracotta or cement. For me, it depends on the Anthurium. I have all of my very difficult Anthuriums in terracotta. Not only is it more breathable, but it is better because the pot gets wet, it absorbs some of the moisture, so your plant isn't sitting in as much moisture, and it will drain from almost every porous of the pot. So like while you're not going to get fast drainage through the sides of your pot, because your terracotta pot is pulling moisture out, it's not just the water doesn't go in and then just sit in this basin. It's active and it's moving, and in my opinion, imitates more of a lifelike environment rather than cement. However, for my cement Anthuriums, which are my Anthurium bakerii and my Anthurium vitarifolium, these are both pendant Anthuriums or belt Anthuriums. These are both in there because one, my bakerii seedlings are seedlings, and so I want them to retain as much moisture as possible so that they can grow big and strong and be happy. My vitarifolium is outside of my greenhouse, so it's not going to be getting that mist and that high humidity, and so I want its roots to be able to maintain a really good amount of moisture. Again, if you are curious about moss, check out Jimmy's video, who he is Legends of Monstera. I will link him in the description. When it comes to lighting, make sure that you are giving your Anthurium bright to indirect low ambient light. Honestly, happy in any condition. I personally prefer to give them brighter light. I don't give them like direct sunlight because that would not be good. They are shade-loving plants, but bright shade-loving plants, if that makes sense. I have a 9-watt Home Depot grow light pointing right at my Warocqueanum, and he loves it. He's about this big now. When I showed him to you in a video the other day, he was only this big. In the last couple of days, he's literally doubled in size. Make sure that if you are going to give your Velvet Anthurium direct light, that it is low direct light. You don't want to be pointing like at probably anything over 20 or 30 watts directly at them. Like my Warocqueanum is here, my light is here, and it's literally like, we're gonna talk about humidity. I have 2 categories for this. I don't think I'll ever do another video where I will have 2 categories for this, but I have 2. We have our humidity to survive and humidity to grow. And this is very particular. Our first category is 55 to 60% humidity to survive. I also will only be using my houseplants as these examples because these are what I have experience with. In the 55 to 60% to survive humidity category, we have crystallinum, ace of spades, and forgetii. The ace of spades is arguable, but honestly, anything below 55% humidity constantly, right? This is bare minimum constantly. Your plants will start to decline over the next couple of days or weeks, and eventually they just won't be plants anymore. Our next category is 65% or over to grow, and that is ace of spades. Ace of spades is arguably the easiest velvet leaf anthurium to take care of, in my opinion, as well as the cheapest one to buy. Mine only cost me $50. The next category is 70% or over to grow, and that is the Anthurium crystallinum. Our second to last category is over 80% humidity or higher to grow, and that is forgetii. And our last category I'm calling the Warocqueanum category, and this is the over 80% humidity to survive or don't even bother category, and the over 90% to grow category. Now, I'm sure that there are outliers, and remember, this is for zone 7A. I live in a desert, in an actual desert, where if you walk outside, the humidity is like 20%. So, at best. Okay, we're gonna talk about watering. This was by far the hardest part of taking care of Anthurium for me to even figure out, for me to even start to figure out. What I will say is that it is very important to not overwater your Anthurium. What I will also say is that it is hard to overwater them, especially if you're keeping them in terracotta. I honestly barely water my Anthurium, and this is because I keep all of my velvet anthuriums in my greenhouse. My greenhouse is filled to 100% every couple of days, and that soaks the soil and waters them. And I find that the misting method in a greenhouse works best for watering. Even when I was at the Amazon Spheres and they had that, it was like a 200-foot tall live plant wall. They water that thing with misting. There's not someone watering all those plants. They water it by misting. I personally prefer misting. That doesn't mean using your tiny little squirt bottle and misting your plants with, mist. That means putting it next to a humidifier or in an enclosed space with a humidifier and letting that humidity hit 100% for a couple of hours and then turning that off, and your plant's been watered. Congratulations. Also, the great thing about misting is that it keeps your plant's leaves from drying up. Velvet Anthurium are very special plants because they require moisture to keep their leaves wet, which is why they need such high humidity. Otherwise, the leaves will dry out and they'll start to erode via fungus, basically. Here's a picture of my Warocqueanum leaf that I let dry out and how gross that looks. When it comes to actually watering my Anthurium, I do it probably every 1 to 1.5 weeks. Okay, moving on to my favorite category. This is general care and fun facts. For dramatic plants like Warocqueanum, you absolutely cannot let your leaves dry out. That will cause them to die, and that won't be fun for you or for anyone, and it's just gonna make you sad. These are epiphytes. These plants like to live on bark, which is why I recommend growing them in a mostly orchid bark mix. I personally pick out the chunkiest pieces of bark, put them in my pot, and call it a day, but you can do whatever you like. Here's a big one. Anthurium need good air circulation. This is why I don't recommend a cloche. This is why I recommend a greenhouse. Cloche, I would say if you're waiting on your greenhouse to show up would be okay, or you could get a cloche and barely prop up the bottom, turn on a fan in the area every so often to get some air flowing in there, but don't ever have a cloche that's just like that you never remove, especially if you're trying to use water. The last tip is that the higher humidity, the better. The leaves come so fast if you do 100% humidity. Literally, they just pop out. My forgetii has already started putting out another leaf. Put out its third leaf 2 months ago, and it's only been 2 months and we're getting another one. My crystallinum has put out 2 leaves in my care, and I've seen 2 Warocqueanum leaves now, so. All right, here's some cool facts. I got these straight out of an article that I read by an Anthurium specialist. I will be linking that article in the description. Please go give that a read. It talks about different kinds of crosses between Anthuriums that he's made personally, where he's found certain Anthuriums, talks about great things that I never knew before. I genuinely learned something reading that, so make sure you go take a look at that article in the description. And now I'm going to tell you some cool things I got out of that article. I'm going to be looking down and I apologize. Micropalpulus epidermal cells that are convex or conical help plants that grow in the shade on forest floors and trees capture light for photosynthesis. The convex or conical lenticular cells result in the velvet that you feel on the plant's leaves. The velvet leaves aid in shedding water faster than glossy leaves, as well as help obtain light better than glossy leaves. So, isn't that interesting? That's why they're velvet. If you've ever wondered why they're velvet, it's because of their cellular shape. How sick is that, dude? A lot of you complain about your plant tissue culture, tetraspermas, and I'm just about to blow your mind, so get ready. Most Anthurium on market today are PTC tissue culture, which is plant tissue culture, such as Ace of Spades or most crystallinum and Forgetii. It is rare to find any true pure velvet Anthurium that has not been hybridized even on accident in any sort of way. Hi, sweetie. You're so cute. So normally I have a 0 to 50 category for you, but that does not exist with this type of plant, so I apologize. Our first category is 50 to 100, and that contains 2 plants, Anthurium magnificum and Anthurium crystallinum. Our next category is $100 to $200. That escalated quickly. This includes Warocqueanum green and wide, Anthurium red crystallinum, Anthurium Forgetii, Anthurium metallicum, Anthurium marmoratum, and Anthurium vienoranum. Vienorum. I'm sorry. Our last category is 200 plus. So anything over $200. Warocqueanum dark and narrow. A pendant Anthurium known as Wendlingerii. Syrianui, Papillilaminum, Shottianum. This is amazing. This is going on my wish list. Dark Mama, and Purple Velvet. Now listen, there's a lot more Anthurium that are velvet. I have lots of cool pictures, but unfortunately I could not find names for most of the velvet Anthurium that I was looking at. They either don't have names and haven't been described, or it's just to be able, they're just not common. Like, you have your common crystallinum, your Forgetii, and I mean, they're not like common, but you can find them. You can find a lot, but there's a lot that you also can't find. And so to try to find some that you haven't heard of before was my goal, and I could not find that many. So now I'm gonna go get my velvet Anthurium and I'm gonna show them to you, and then we'll be done. Now there's no way to play favorites here, so I'm just gonna start on my left, which is our Warocqueanum. So here are my 2 smaller ones. We have this one, which if we did head test, it's about this big. And my seedling, which just put out this new leaf. And it's putting out some fuzzy roots right now. Then we have this magnificent creature. This is my Warocqueanum. He is massive. You can see he's a little iridescent too. Super shiny. So I don't think that it is the dark form, which is fine with me, because after seeing the regular green form in person, it's beautiful. It's so iridescent, it's crazy. But here's a head test. You gotta hold this back a little bit. It's bigger than my head now. When I showed you the other day, we were only this big. And we have my Anthurium crystallinum. This guy is in semi-hydro, so here's kind of what that looks like. I haven't repotted him from when I bought him at Peace, Love, and Happiness, so he's still in semi. We also have my Ace of Spades, which has a blue tint to it. I don't think it's gonna come through in this light, but yeah. Then the big boy himself, who almost actually just fell over. My forgetty guy. Those are my velvet leaf anthurium. Well, thank you so much for watching this in-depth care guide about velvet leaf anthurium. Please make sure that you subscribe. Please make sure to like this video. Make sure that you leave a comment. Tell me what your favorite velvet leaf anthurium is and if you'll ever own one. Bye.